Okay, so now c5, and guys, this is a bit too ambitious, too early. White grabs space on the queen side, but now the d5 square becomes weaker, and black gets time to recognize for a central break. Okay, so since this bishop is attacked, so that's why bishop to c7, and after that b4. As you can see, white start attacking on the queen side, but e5. And guys, this is the standard answer. Whenever your opponent expand on the flank, you strike back in the center. And you can see Steinitz is ready to, start to take over the initiative. And now white can continue this game by capturing on e5, because after knight takes e5, knight to d4. And let's suppose if okay, so since this bishop is attacked, so if bishop to g6, f4, attacking the knight, and now you can see white is getting back into the game. Okay, so in the actual game, after the move e5, bishop to e2 by Zukertort. And guys, this is, too slow. I mean, now black can continue with the move e4, attacking the knight. But what's the problem? I mean, this knight can go back on d2. But guys, if this happens, now queen to g5, attacking on, g2 pawn. So that's by g3. And after that, this bishop can infiltrate by bishop to h3. And now you can see here black is successful in creating some weakness in white position. Okay, so in the actual game, after the move bishop to e2, here knight at g goes to f6. And basically he misses the chance, and now again capturing on e5 might be the better option, but Zukertort decides to develop his another bishop on b2. Okay, so after this knight goes back on d2, h5, and guys, this is a very Steinitz style stuff right here. With this pawn push, black is basically saying, I want a hook on h3, and I also want your king to feel, very uncomfortable. Okay, so now knight to h4, and you can see what's coming next. So here the best defensive move is actually bishop to f1. And yes, I know, basically this undevelops the bishop, but guys, believe me, this might be the best move, because here Zukertort decides to attack the knight with g3, which is a bad move because it just creates a huge weakness, and Steinitz takes away advantage of this by knight to g2 check. And after king to f1, and now I just want you all to pause the video and try to guess the next move of black in this position. In the actual game, here Steinitz sacrifices his knights with knight takes e3 check, and he gives up it for two pawns, because after f takes e3, bishop takes g3, and here you can see he's successful in tearing open the white king side. Okay, so as you can see, since this bishop is attacked, so that's why bishop to c7. And now just take a look at this position. I mean, white's king is completely exposed. And look at this, e4, d5, c6 pawn chain. It is absolutely controlling the center. Okay, so here queen to g1, and he basically wants to run, but guys, queen to f1 might have been the better option here, so that he could attack this active bishop, because in the future these bishop are going to create huge trouble to white position, because now Steinitz immediately brings his rook to h6, and you can see what's coming next. So that's why he slides the king back on f1, and after that rook to g6, and now the rooks, this rook are on the g file, and this is exactly where black wants them. Okay, so now basically white decides to capture on exchange c6, b takes c6, and guys, just look at the king side. Black is creating multiple threats like bishop takes h3 check, and if the king tries to run, then black will go for bishop to g3, forking the queen and the king. So white has to be very careful here. And here Zukertort goes for rook to g1. He basically, that's why and basically this move stops this move, and in the future you can see this king can run. And after that knight to g4, and you can see the attack is just keep rolling, and white pieces are basically stuck around their own king. Okay, so since this rook is attacked, so now basically this rook can either go to f6 or maybe on h6. Basically, both the cases are fine. So here Steinitz decides to, go to, he basically brings the rook to h6. Maybe he wants to push g5 so that he can create the passer supported by the rook and the queen. And after that, bishop to c3, and you can see what he's preparing for. But Steinitz continues the attack with g5. He targets the knight, and after knight to e2, rook to f6, attacking the queen. And after this, queen goes to g2, and guys, this is the most interesting part of the game. I mean, can you guess the next move played by Steinitz? This move is so legendary that even the latest version of Stockfish respects it. In this position, William Steinitz sacrificed his rook with rook to f3, and this is one of those legendary moves. And guys, a rook sacrifice, that just shuts down the white completely. And let's suppose if white decides to capture by knight takes f3, e takes f3, attacking the queen and the knight. And after the queen moves, f takes e2, and you can see black isn't just getting two minor pieces for the rook. Look at this e pawn. I mean, this single pawn is going to be a disaster for the white pieces. So that's why after rook to f3, here Zukertort doesn't capture the rook. Instead, he goes for knight to f1, which is the best move because it also defends the pawn on e3. And after that, rook to b8, bringing the another rook into the attack. And guys, now it's important for white to go for rook to h1. The idea is to go for knight to g1 so that he can attack this active rook. And guys, here's the best move for black is to go for queen to f6 so that he can maintain the pressure. And now, and yeah guys, so let me tell you something, that now queen to g1. But wait, what? Previously, I said knight to g3 was the best move, which attacks the rook. Then why, bringing the queen back to g1? And guys, this is important. Yes, because let's suppose after queen to f6, if white goes for knight to g3, knight to g1, which targets the rook, as I said, And now, this rook has to move. But guys, that's not the case. And here I just, want to ask you to pause the video and try to guess the next move. But I don't think, you can find the move, because this move is so crazy that even, top chess engine stand up and, start clapping. I mean, in this position, the best move for black is to sacrifice the rook by rook to b2. And guys, I mean, what can I say? There are two ways in which white can capture the rook here. I mean, if white decides to, white can capture the rook on f3 and also the rook on b2. Okay, so let's look at all the possibility one by one. Let's suppose if white goes for knight takes f3, then simply rook takes g2. White has to lose the queen. Okay, so let me go back to the move, rook to b2. And guys, the another possibility which comes in our mind is simply, bishop takes b2. And after, and now what's next? The next move will be rook takes f1. Because if queen takes f1, now comes bishop to a5 check. And guys, just take a look at this position. Look at the, black bishops. I mean, they are placed perfectly, covering all the squares around the white king. And also the queen on f6 covers the f2 square. So that's why the only move is bishop to c3. And after that, simply bishop takes c3, and that's a mate. And guys, that's why I am saying that these two bishops are, very deadly. And okay, so in the actual game, after let me go back to the move rook to b8. Here, basically, Zukertort goes for king to d2. He just slides the king away from the black attack. And now to win this game, black has to, just find the move bishop to h3. The idea is after, queen takes g5, queen takes g5, rook takes g5, bishop takes f1, rook takes h5, rook to f2, creating pressure over the knight. So that's why rook to e1, rook to b3. And clearly, you can see here black is creating immense pressure over the white king. But after, let me go back to the move, which is king to d2. But after this move, f5. And basically, here Steinitz just launch a pawn tsunami on the king side. Okay, so now rook to f2, attacking the queen. And let's suppose if this queen goes back to g1, simply queen to f3. And you can see this is all over for white. So that's why after rook to f2, here Zukertort finally decides to give up the queen. And after, queen takes f2, knight takes g4. And here he gives a check. And obviously, he cannot exchange due to this pin. So that's why king to c2, h takes g4. And now how will you, and now how, white will continue this game? I mean, if white gives a check, then simply king to e7. And you can see white cannot capture the rook because of this bishop. So that's why to do this all, firstly he goes for bishop to d2, so that he can deflect the bishop and give a check. But this is not going to work because, Stein simply pushed the pawn further. He just attacks the bishop. And guys, in this position, the final move by, I mean here a rook to f1 check. And in this position, the final move by Steinitz is bishop to f4. And here, Johannes, Zukertort resigned. What a game, guys. Imagine this level of chess was played over a century ago. I mean, that's absolutely amazing. Like this video, and I will see you in the next one. This is your host, Bison, signing off. Bye bye.